Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Independent media outlets, businesses and cultural institutions joined a nationwide strike in Serbia on Friday, intensifying pressure on the government. The protest movement, spearheaded by students occupying over 60 university faculties nationwide, emerged in response to the collapse of a railway station roof in the town of Novi Sad on November the 1st, 2024, which claimed 15 lives. What was behind this collapse and what exactly are protesters demanding? Well, to explore these questions, we are joined by Ivan Vejvoda. He's Permanent Fellow at the Institute of Human Sciences in Vienna. Mr. Vejvoda, welcome to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure as always, sir. Pleasure as always. So, talk us through what happened. What was the cause of the collapse, and how does that connect directly to the protests?
Well, indeed, this tragedy, as you mentioned, on November 1st, where 15 people were killed by a canopy that fell, triggered a massive response spearheaded by students, but joined by all those whom you mentioned, but even high schools and even elementary school teachers joined in more than 100 cities, big and small towns in Serbia. The main reason is that people thought and felt and knew that this was because of corruption, because of shoddy work, because of overbilled expenses for the reconstruction of the whole Novi Sad station, and because people have been living now under this administration of the Serbian Progressive Party and the President Aleksandar Vucic, have known that there is corruption, there are elements of captured state, and basically a backsliding of democratic institutions. And people do see this and can tolerate, as in any society, certain levels of corruption, of which there is in every society. You mentioned a little while ago the Polish case. But when this does not have human victims, let's say that it is to a certain level tolerable. But then when 15 people, completely innocent, are killed, then after all these years, there's a trigger and the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. And that is what led to these protests, with a key demand of the protests, which I must underline are completely peaceful protests, for full transparency and accountability of what went on, so as to reveal who was the main contractor, subcontractors, sub-subcontractors, and to follow the line of the money that went in, because it was revealed that the cost of this was about 5 times higher than it originally should have been. And people, and especially the students who are spearheading the movement, want the rule of law to return. They want checks and balances between the judiciary, the executive powers to be reestablished and to have clarity. So they're demanding not from the president to explain, but they want the general prosecutor to come out. They want the judges to come out. In the meantime, 13 people have been indicted over this, and also the documents have been trickled in a trickled fashion, been published. The latest ones just the other day, even though the government maintained that it had published all the documents even about 10 days ago.
Understood. Thank you very much for laying all that out. Now, there are a number of points that you make there. The first is that this is the last in a whole series of corrupt activities that have been tolerated thus far by the public. But the death of, as you say, these innocent people, this tragedy, is what triggered this national outrage and these national protests. Now, how likely is it that the protesters are actually going to achieve some kind of change? And what would they like to see? I mean, you mentioned the prosecutors taking a more active role, but how independent are the prosecutors, and will the executive branch actually stand in the way of that happening?
Well, as in every country and in every institution, there are decent people who are working, and thus there are decent prosecutors. Now, here, the government is under pressure. There was a statement yesterday on national TV by the President, the Prime Minister, and the Speaker of the Parliament that basically taking a back foot and acknowledging that not all documents had been published. They have taken a more temperate tone. So the pressure of the people, if I can put it in that way, is working. And they say that they will abolish and pardon a certain number of students and professors, about 16 of them, who were arrested and then subsequently released, and also to indict those who were aggressive against these peaceful blockades by students. So we're seeing the wheels of justice moving somewhat too slowly by anyone's account. The images, this is the image of last night from the television with the president. The images you saw before is a blockade of the main thoroughway in Belgrade for 24 hours. It's actually still ongoing as we speak, and it ends at 10 a.m. today. So the movement, this very broad and deep movement of Serbian society, is still active, and I don't think it will relent until all the demands have been met. Now, to your question, what will this lead to? I think this is a huge building block to return to what I said were checks and balances and separation of powers, and principally to elections that would be fair, and under conditions that people would feel that they are not being frauded, as was the feeling in the December 2023 elections for the city of Belgrade, that everyone thought the opposition would win. But in fact, because of the massive fraud, the ruling party was able to maintain rule in the capital city. So the opposition is in the background. They're not taking a lead because it is the young people who are in the lead here. There is a suggestion for a transitional technocratic government, which is being refused by the government. The government, on the other hand, has offered a non-obligatory referendum on the popularity of the president. So there are various ideas that are floating around, which I think will coagulate at some point, because the political crisis is serious, and we see by the reaction of the government yesterday that they do feel they need to move and address this issue as they see fit. But we'll see whether the protests acknowledge this and see it as enough, as a sufficient condition to start backing down.
Understood. So some green shoots of optimism showing themselves there, but as you say, we shall see how that plays out. Now, you're talking about President Vucic, and he has made some worrying statements. He said he called this a colour revolution. And he also said that the time will come when we have to take steps that states take in such situations. But our duty is to tolerate all this for as long as possible. That sounds ominous, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed. And that is why I mentioned last night's national TV appearance, where the tone definitely changed. It was a more temperate, prudent tone, extending a hand, asking for a dialogue to begin, saying that it's not good, in his words, that we are not talking to each other. The Prime Minister said he would like to meet with the rectors and deans of these universities. So, as I said, the government feels the pressure and feels that it needs to change the tone, as we just witnessed here. They laid out what, in their view, was satisfying the demands that were there on a big blackboard. It is back now to the movement to say whether this is satisfactory and whether they deem that these demands have been met, half met, three-quarters met. So we'll see from the reaction later today and tomorrow where we are. But you see here the president with his blackboard explaining all that they think they have done already.
Understood. Okay. Now, is the rest of the European Union watching this unfold? How do you think it's going to influence the EU attitude towards the accession of Serbia into the bloc?
Well, indeed, that is a very good question, and may I commend you and your television for paying attention to this, because it is not being followed in the world press. Of course, there are much more pressing issues like the Russian invasion of Ukraine, what's happening in the Middle East, not to mention anything else. This is an important development in this country, because basically this young generation says, we want to make a stand, we want to live in this country and not leave with our diplomas for a better life. We want a better and more decent life under the rule of law. So the EU is, of course, watching this very carefully. Serbia and its government and all of its governments have maintained the path towards full EU membership. Serbia is, along with Montenegro, most advanced of the 6 Western Balkan countries. There's a question about whether the next cluster, as the jargon of the EU calls it, will be opened for Serbia. And this, if it happens, it will happen by the end of the month or in February. And of course, the whole issue of enlargement, which is I would say, the overarching question that we are all looking at as the US and China dominate the world, whether Europe's security and enlargement, I would say, is a key question of European security, because becoming member of the European Union closes the space for what euphemistically we call third actors, namely Russia, China, and others, to interfere.
Well, does it close the door? I mean, we've seen Russian interference in EU member states already. We've seen Chinese investment in EU member states. Hungary is one, and there is some talk that it was a Chinese company that manufactured or built the station at Novi Sad. Is it simply bringing the fox into the hen house?
Well, indeed, and that's really what this is about. And I think because this bottom-up civic youth and general societal movement to come back to decency is a response to the foxes, right? And to those who wish to show the weakness of EU, of democracy, and of NATO, I would add. So we are having a battle royale here.
Unfortunately, Mr. Vejvoda, we have to leave it there. But thank you very much, as always, for sharing your insights. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.